I still remember the first time I met Claire. It was at a friend's wedding, and she stood out among the crowd with her infectious laughter and radiant smile. I was captivated. Our relationship blossomed quickly, fueled by shared interests in music, travel, and our dreams for the future. We built a life together, filled with love and trust. I thought we were invincible. Fast forward to a few years later, and things started to change. The spark that once ignited our connection began to flicker. Our once carefree evenings spent dancing to live music transformed into mundane nights on the couch, scrolling through social media, her eyes glued to the screen while I attempted to engage her in conversation. I noticed her spending more time away from home, claiming it was for work or catching up with friends. I brushed off the twinges of doubt that crept into my mind. After all, relationships go through phases, right? The nightclub where she began hanging out was called The Pulse, a popular spot known for its vibrant atmosphere and eclectic mix of DJs. Claire always loved music, and I thought it was harmless for her to unwind with friends after a long week. I even encouraged her to go out and have fun without me. Little did I know that the very place I thought would bring her joy was the stage for a betrayal that would shatter my world. One Friday night, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to surprise Claire and join her at the Pulse. I was excited, imagining her surprised face when she saw me walk through the entrance. As I entered, the pulsating music enveloped me, and the dim lights created an electric atmosphere. I scanned the crowd, searching for her familiar face, but instead I was struck by the sight of her dancing close to a DJ. His name was Ryan, a local DJ with a reputation for his wild parties and charm. I watched from a distance, my heart sinking as I saw Claire lean in closer to him, her laughter blending with the music. It was a moment that felt surreal, like watching a movie unfold in slow motion. I could feel my pulse quickening, a mix of disbelief and growing anger. I approached the bar, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. Maybe they were just having fun, I thought, but as I took a sip of my drink, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that gnawed at me. The sight of them together felt like a punch to the gut. I could see the way she looked at him, something I hadn't seen in her eyes for a long time. As the night wore on, I decided to confront her. I made my way through the throng of dancing bodies, my heart pounding in my chest. When I reached her, I could see the shock on her face. "Claire, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her eyes darting back to Ryan, who was oblivious to the storm brewing. "I saw you," I replied, my voice barely above the music. "You were all over him." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I saw guilt flicker across her face. "It's not what it looks like," she insisted, her voice rising above the beat. But I could see through the facade. I felt the betrayal wash over me like a tidal wave, and I knew I had to find out the truth. As I stood there, anger and confusion swirling within me, I realized I had two choices: to walk away and pretend everything was fine, or to confront the reality of what was happening. I chose the latter, driven by a mix of desperation and the need for closure. I had to know if the woman I loved was truly the person I thought she was. In that moment, my heart shattered, and the path to revenge began to form in my mind. The DJ was about to learn that his next set would be his last. The confrontation that night was a blur of emotions. Claire's protests fell on deaf ears as the reality of her betrayal sunk in. I felt like I was in a nightmare, watching the woman I loved dance with another man, her laughter ringing in my ears like a cruel taunt. I could see the way Ryan leaned into her, whispering something that made her laugh even harder. It was a sound that used to be reserved for me, and now it was shared with someone who had no right to it. "Let's go outside," I insisted, my voice firm as I grabbed her arm. She hesitated, glancing back at Ryan, who was still spinning records, completely unaware of the storm brewing just a few feet away. I dragged her through the crowd, the pulsating bass of the music fading as we stepped outside into the cool night air. The neon lights of the nightclub flickered behind us, a stark contrast to the darkness that was creeping into my heart. Once we were away from prying eyes, I turned to her, my anger boiling over. "What the hell, Claire? I saw you. You were practically all over him." "James, please, it's not what you think," she pleaded, her eyes wide with panic. We were just having fun. It didn't mean anything. Fun, is that what you call it? Because it looks like you're having a little too much fun with him. The hurt in my voice was palpable and I could feel the tears threatening to spill over. You've been distant for weeks and now I find you here acting like this. She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. No more excuses. I deserve the truth. Have you been seeing him behind my back? Claire's expression shifted from panic to guilt, and I could see her mind racing as she searched for the right words. I didn't mean for it to happen, James. It just happened. I thought it was just a fling, something to fill the void. The void. Her words hit me like a slap. Did she really think I wouldn't notice her slipping away from me? The late nights, the secretive phone calls, now they all made sense. A fling with a DJ? You've got to be kidding me. The anger surged through me and I felt my fists clench at my sides. You think this is just some game? I'm sorry, I never wanted to hurt you, she cried, her voice breaking. You just don't understand how lonely I've felt. Lonely. The word echoed in my mind, twisting the knife deeper. I had been so focused on my work, trying to provide for us, that I had neglected her need for emotional connection. But that didn't justify her actions. You could have talked to me, Claire. Instead, you chose to betray me. The weight of her betrayal felt suffocating, and I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. I had always trusted her, believed in the love we shared, and now it felt like the foundation of our relationship was crumbling. I needed to regain control, to take back the power she had taken from me. In that moment, an idea began to form in my mind, an idea that would expose her infidelity in a way that would leave no room for denial. I could make Ryan pay for what he did, and in doing so, I would reclaim my dignity. I thought of the nightclub, the crowds, the music, and the thrill of the stage. I could turn this betrayal into a spectacle, a public revelation that would leave both Claire and Ryan reeling. Do you know what I'm going to do? I asked, my voice low and steady. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you did tonight. I'm going to expose you, both of you. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment I saw fear flicker across her face. James, you can't do that. Watch me, I shot back, my resolve hardening. I felt a rush of adrenaline course through me, fueled by anger and betrayal. As I turned to head back into the club, I could hear her calling after me, but I didn't look back. I had made my decision. The DJ booth was elevated, a throne for Ryan where he spun his records and basked in the adoration of the crowd. I knew that the moment I confronted him, it would be public. The thought of the audience watching, the energy of the nightclub swirling around us, sent a shiver of excitement down my spine. As I pushed through the crowd, I felt the weight of my resolve. I was no longer the heartbroken husband. I was a man on a mission, ready to reclaim my honor. I had to make this right, even if it meant tearing down the life we had built together. I approached the DJ booth, my heart racing with anticipation and dread. This was it. I would confront Ryan, and in doing so, I would expose the truth. As I made my way through the pulsating crowd, a mix of anticipation and dread filled my chest. The bass reverberated through the floor, and the vibrant lights danced around me, creating an atmosphere that was both exhilarating and suffocating. Each step felt deliberate, as if I was marching toward a confrontation that would change everything. Finally, I reached the DJ booth, elevated above the crowd like a stage where Ryan ruled the night. He was lost in the music, wearing headphones, bobbing his head to the beat. I could see the way the crowd responded to him, hands in the air, bodies moving in sync with the rhythm. It made my blood boil. How could he stand there, blissfully unaware of the chaos he had wrought in my life? I cleared my throat, the sound barely cutting through the thumping bass. When he looked up and saw me, his expression shifted from surprise to confusion. "Hey man, what's up?" he asked, pulling off his headphones and leaning closer, trying to read my expression. "Ryan," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "We need to talk." He laughed, thinking I was just another fan wanting to chat, but I wasn't here for small talk. "Not here to chat about the music, buddy. I'm here about Claire." His demeanor changed instantly. The smile faded, replaced by a look of recognition. "What do you mean?" "I saw you with her," I said, my voice low but firm. "You think it's just a game? She's my wife." The realization hit him, and I could see the gears turning in his mind. He tried to play it cool, but I could sense his pulse quickening. Look, man, it's not what you think. We were just having a good time. A good time. I interrupted, my voice rising above the music. You call this a good time? I gestured toward the crowd, the lights flashing wildly around us. You think it's okay to flirt with a married woman, to take advantage of her when she's vulnerable? He shifted uncomfortably, glancing back at the crowd. I didn't know she was married, he stammered, but I could see the lie in his eyes. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had his sights set on her, and now he was caught in the crossfire. Maybe you didn't know, but now you do, I said, leaning closer, my voice low and menacing. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done. Ryan. Face paled, and for a moment I reveled in the fear I saw in his eyes. Come on, man, let's not make a scene. This is my gig, he pleaded, his bravado slipping away. We can talk about this later. No, we're going to talk about this right now, I said, my resolve hardening. I glanced around at the crowd, the vibrant energy pulsating around us, and suddenly the idea crystallized in my mind. You're going to tell everyone what happened, right here, right now. What? No way. He exclaimed, panic creeping into his voice. You can't do that. But I was already formulating my plan. The crowd was buzzing with energy, oblivious to the drama unfolding just a few feet away. I could feel my heart racing, adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was my moment. I would expose the truth, and there was no turning back. Listen, I said, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You can either confess to the crowd, or I can make it much worse for you. I'll tell them everything. How you manipulated my wife. How you took advantage of her loneliness while I was working hard to provide for us. He hesitated, and in that moment I could see the wheels turning in his mind, but I wasn't interested in negotiation. I was done playing games. You have 5 seconds to decide, I said, my voice firm. Either you own up to what you did, or I'll make sure everyone in this club knows exactly who you are. He opened his mouth to protest, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew I was serious. The crowd was starting to notice our exchange, curious glances being cast our way. The energy in the room shifted, and I could feel the anticipation building. Finally, Ryan swallowed hard, his bravado crumbling. Okay, just give me a second, he stammered, glancing nervously at the crowd. I could see the gears turning in his mind as he contemplated his next move. Now, I pressed, my voice low but filled with urgency. Before I lose my patience. He took a deep breath, his eyes darting around the crowd, and I knew I had him cornered. All right, I'll do it, he said, his voice shaky. But this isn't how I wanted it to go down. Too bad, I replied, my heart racing with anticipation. You're going to tell them the truth. As he turned to face the crowd, I could feel the tension in the air. Every eye in the nightclub was on us, and I knew that this was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I would expose the betrayal that had shattered my world. Ryan lifted the microphone, and the crowd quieted down, the energy shifting as they sensed something significant was about to happen. I leaned in closer, ready to witness the fallout of this moment. Hey everyone, he called out, his voice wavering. I need to say something. The nightclub was electric with anticipation, the crowd's energy shifting as they sensed the tension in the air. Ryan stood at the DJ booth, the microphone in his hand trembling slightly, his gaze flickering nervously between the audience and me. I could see the realization dawning on him that he was about to expose not just himself, but also Claire's betrayal. The weight of the moment hung heavy, and I felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. Hey everyone, he called out, his voice wavering slightly. The music had died down, replaced by a hush that fell over the crowd, eager for whatever revelation was about to unfold. I need to say something important. I moved closer, my heart pounding in my chest as I locked eyes with Claire, who had finally made her way to the front of the crowd. She looked shocked, her face pale as she realized what was happening. The realization that I was about to expose her in front of everyone was written all over her face, and for the first time I felt a surge of satisfaction. I want to apologize, Ryan continued, his voice shaky. I didn't know that the woman I was hanging out with tonight was married. He hesitated, glancing at me, and I could see the fear in his eyes. But I guess I should have known better. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. The crowd murmured, whispers rippling through the audience like a wave. I could feel the tension building as they processed his words. This wasn't just a casual confession. It was a public admission of guilt, and I was determined to make sure it didn't end there. "Let me clarify," I interjected, stepping closer to the microphone. The crowd turned their attention to me, and I could feel a mix of curiosity and confusion. "This isn't just about a misunderstanding. This is about a betrayal. This man," I gestured toward Ryan, "has been seeing my wife Claire behind my back." Gasps erupted from the crowd, and I could see the shock ripple through the audience. It was surreal, watching their faces morph from amusement to disbelief, the reality of my words sinking in. I could feel Claire's eyes boring into me, a mix of anger and desperation as she attempted to process the situation. "James, please," she called out, her voice cutting through the crowd. "You don't have to do this." But I wasn't backing down. "No, Claire, you don't get to play the victim here. You chose to betray me. You chose to seek comfort in the arms of another man while I was busy working to build our future. You think I wouldn't notice. You think this wouldn't hurt." The crowd was silent now, all eyes on us as I laid bare the truth of our relationship. I could see the shame wash over Claire's face, her cheeks flushed as she realized the repercussions of her actions. I felt a strange sense of power in that moment, knowing I was taking control of the narrative. Ryan stood there, his expression shifting from fear to defiance. "Look, man, I didn't know. I'm sorry, all right. I didn't mean to get involved with her. We were just having fun." "Fun," I echoed, my voice rising again. "You think this is all just a game? You've shattered my life, and for what? A few cheap thrills." The crowd was captivated, the atmosphere thick with tension. I could feel their collective breath held, waiting for the next move. This was my moment of reckoning, and I was determined to make it count. "Claire, you need to own up to your actions," I said, my gaze locking onto hers. "You need to tell everyone how you betrayed me, how you chose to throw away our love for a night of excitement." The silence stretched on, and for a moment I thought she might refuse. But then, with a shaky breath, she stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, James, I messed up. I thought I was just having fun, but I didn't realize how much I was hurting you." The crowd reacted, a mix of shock and sympathy washing over them. I could see people whispering to each other, exchanging glances as they processed the unfolding drama. This was no longer just a personal affair. It had become a public spectacle, and I was determined to make sure it left a lasting impression. "Is that it?" I challenged, my voice cutting through the murmurs. "Is that all you have to say? Because I deserve more than just an apology. You need to face the consequences of your actions. You need to understand the pain you've caused." Claire's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but I wasn't interested in her tears. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done, to understand the depth of the betrayal she had inflicted upon me. "You think you can just walk away from this? You think a simple apology wipes the slate clean?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably, glancing around at the crowd, and I could see the tide turning against him. The audience was no longer captivated by the music or the spectacle of the club. They were invested in our story. "Ladies and gentlemen," I continued, my voice steady, "this is a lesson in trust, betrayal, and the consequences of our actions. Don't let anyone take advantage of your love, because when you do, the pain can be devastating." With that, I stepped back, allowing the weight of my words to linger in the air. The crowd erupted in murmurs, and I could feel the energy shift again, this time toward outrage and sympathy. I had exposed the truth, and it felt both liberating and terrifying. As I looked at Claire, tears streaming down her face, I felt a pang of regret. Was this really what I wanted? To humiliate her in front of everyone? But deep down, I knew I had to do it. I had to reclaim my power, to ensure that neither of them would forget this moment. The aftermath of the confrontation was just beginning, and I could feel the tension in the air, thick with unresolved emotions. I had made my point, but now I had to face the consequences of my actions. The atmosphere in the nightclub shifted dramatically after my confrontation with Ryan and Claire. The crowd was buzzing, whispers swirling around like a tempest. I had exposed their affair, and the fallout was palpable. People were no longer just patrons enjoying a night out. They were spectators of a live drama that had unfolded before their eyes. The energy that had once been electric was now charged with tension, and I could feel the weight of my actions pressing down on me. As I stepped back from the DJ booth, I watched Claire's face contort with a mix of shock, anger, and humiliation. For the first time, I saw her vulnerability laid bare, stripped of the confidence she had displayed while dancing with Ryan. It was a sobering sight, and part of me felt a pang of regret. Did I really want to hurt her this way? But the other part of me, the part that had been betrayed, screamed for justice. Ryan was still standing at the booth, his bravado shattered. The crowd had turned against him, their expressions a mixture of disdain and pity. I could see him trying to salvage his reputation. But it was too late. The damage was done, and there was no coming back from this humiliation. "Get off the stage!" Someone shouted from the back, and the crowd erupted into laughter and jeers. Ryan's face turned crimson, and I felt a rush of satisfaction at his discomfort. He had taken something precious from me, and now he was paying the price. Claire moved toward me, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "James, how could you do this?" she shouted, her voice rising above the din of the crowd. "You've made a fool of me." "A fool? You made a fool of yourself, Claire," I shot back, my voice steady. "You made a choice, and now you have to face the consequences." "Consequences?" she echoed, her eyes flashing. "You think this is the answer, humiliating me in front of all these people? You're just as bad as Ryan." I felt like I had been slapped. "Just as bad. You're the one who cheated. You're the one who betrayed my trust." My voice rang out, echoing in the now quiet club. People were watching us, their eyes glued to our confrontation, and I realized that every word mattered. "I thought we could work through this," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought you loved me." "I do love you, Claire," I yelled, the anger bubbling to the surface. "But love isn't enough when trust is broken. You shattered everything we built together." The crowd was silent, hanging on our every word. I could see the mix of sympathy and judgment on their faces. I didn't want to be the villain in this story, but I felt like I was being pushed into that role by the very woman I loved. "James, please," Claire said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "Let's talk about this. Not here, not like this." But I was done talking. I had already laid everything bare, and I wasn't going to let her sweep it under the rug. "What's there to talk about, Claire? You've made your choice. You chose him over me." She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Ryan interjected, attempting to reclaim some semblance of control. "Look, man, I didn't mean to get involved with her. I'm sorry for what happened. It was a mistake." "Your mistake has cost us everything," I shot back, my voice cold. "You think an apology makes it all better. You think you can just walk away from this." The crowd murmured in agreement, and I felt a swell of support. I had turned the tide, and now it was time to drive my point home. This is what happens when you betray someone's trust. This is the reality of infidelity. It's not just a fling, it's a destruction of everything we built together. Claire's face fell, and I could see the tears streaming down her cheeks. It was hard to watch, but I had to remind myself that this was her doing, not mine. She had chosen this path, and now she had to face the consequences. As I looked around the room, I could see the audience processing the drama unfolding before them. Some looked sympathetic, others judgmental, but all were captivated by our story. The spectacle of it all was intoxicating, and I felt a rush of power. I was no longer the heartbroken husband. I was the man reclaiming his dignity. "James," Claire said, her voice barely a whisper now, "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was just having fun, but I see now how wrong I was." "Fun?" I echoed, the bitterness creeping into my voice. "You think this is fun? You've destroyed us, Claire. You've destroyed everything we had." The crowd was silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could feel the tension building again, and I knew I had to finish this. Let this be a lesson to everyone here tonight. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it can't just be fixed with a simple apology. It takes time, effort, and honesty, things you clearly didn't have the courage to offer. With that, I turned away from her, my heart pounding. I didn't want to see her tears anymore. I didn't want to feel the pang of regret. I had made my point, and now it was time to walk away. I could hear the murmurs of the crowd, their voices rising again as they processed the drama. As I stepped back into the thrumming heart of the nightclub, I felt a mix of triumph and emptiness. I had exposed the truth, but at what cost? The love I once cherished lay in ruins, and I could only hope that this moment would serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of betrayal. But deep down, I knew that the battle wasn't over. The aftermath of this confrontation would ripple through our lives, and as I looked back at Claire, still standing in the booth, I realized I would have to confront the emotional consequences of my actions as well. As I stepped deeper into the pulsating crowd of the Pulse, the weight of what had just transpired hung heavy in the air. The adrenaline that had fueled my confrontation was beginning to fade, replaced by an unsettling mix of triumph and regret. I had exposed Claire's betrayal in front of everyone, but now I was left with the bitter taste of that victory. The music thumped around me, but it felt distant, muted by the chaos of my thoughts. I had wanted to reclaim my power, to show Claire and Ryan the consequences of their actions, but in doing so, I had also laid bare the raw wounds of our relationship. I could still see Claire's face, streaked with tears, and the pain etched in her. Features was a reminder that love is not just about passion, it's also about trust, vulnerability, and ultimately forgiveness. The crowd buzzed with excitement, their conversations laced with gossip about the dramatic scene they had just witnessed. I could hear snippets, people speculating about Claire and Ryan, their whispers filled with judgment and intrigue. It was intoxicating and horrifying all at once. I had turned our private turmoil into public spectacle, and now I was left to grapple with the reality of my choices. I made my way to the bar, ordering a drink to steady my nerves. As I leaned against the counter, I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that had settled in my chest. I had wanted to hurt Claire, to make her understand the depth of her betrayal, but the aftermath was far more complicated than I had anticipated. The anger that had driven me to this point was now mingled with sorrow. I looked back toward the DJ booth, where Ryan was trying to salvage his reputation, but the crowd had turned against him. They were shouting, mocking him for his role in the affair, and I felt a strange sense of satisfaction at his discomfort. Yet this satisfaction was fleeting. I couldn't help but wonder if I had crossed a line. Had I become the very monster I sought to punish? As I took a sip of my drink, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I was met by a familiar face, one of our mutual friends, Lisa, who had been watching the events unfold from the sidelines. Her expression was a mix of concern and sympathy. "James, are you okay?" she asked, her voice laced with genuine worry. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I needed to expose them to reclaim my dignity, but now I just feel lost." Lisa nodded, her gaze understanding. "You did what you felt you had to do, but remember, revenge often comes at a price. It's easy to get caught up in the moment, especially when emotions are running high." Her words resonated with me. I had acted on impulse, driven by a need for justice, but in doing so, I had created a spectacle that would haunt me long after the night was over. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take next. "I don't want to lose Claire," I confessed, my voice trembling, "but I don't know how to come back from this. It feels irreparable." "Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to face the consequences of our actions," Lisa said gently. "If you truly love her, you'll have to find a way to communicate that. Even after everything that's happened, there's still a chance for healing, if you're both willing to put in the effort." Her words struck a chord. I realized that while I had exposed Claire's betrayal, I had also exposed my own vulnerabilities. I had let my anger dictate my actions, but now it was time to confront the deeper issues that lay beneath the surface. I took a deep breath, the weight of my choices crashing down on me. "I need to talk to her," I said, determination replacing my earlier uncertainty. "I need to find a way to confront this, to see if there's anything left worth saving." Lisa smiled, her eyes filled with encouragement. "That's a good start. Just remember, it won't be easy. Healing takes time, and you both will have to be honest with each other." With newfound resolve, I made my way back toward the DJ booth, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see Claire standing there, still surrounded by a few curious onlookers, her expression a mixture of shame and defiance. I knew I had to approach her, to extend an olive branch despite the chaos of the night. As I reached her, the noise of the crowd faded into the background. "Claire," I said, my voice steady but soft. "Can we talk?" just you and me." She looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. The moment hung in the air, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, she nodded, and I led her away from the crowd into a quieter corner of the club where the music was a distant thrum. "I'm sorry for what I did," I began, my voice thick with emotion. "I let my anger get the best of me. I wanted to hurt you because I was hurt, but I realize now that it doesn't solve anything." Claire's eyes softened, and I could see the pain reflected in them. "James, I never meant to betray you. I was lost, and I thought I was just having fun. I didn't think about how it would affect you or us." "I know," I said, my voice trembling, "but we need to face this together. I don't want to lose you, but we have to be honest about what happened and how we got here." For a moment we stood in silence, the weight of our shared pain hanging between us. Finally, Claire stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to try, James. I want to find a way back to each other if you'll let me." Hope flickered in my chest, and I nodded. "Let's take it one step at a time. We can figure this out together." As we stood there, the chaos of the nightclub faded away, and for the first time that night I felt a sense of clarity. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was willing to navigate it if it meant finding a way back to the love we once shared. In that moment, I realized that love isn't just about the highs, it's about weathering the storms together. It's about trust, honesty, and the willingness to forgive. And while the scars of betrayal would remain, perhaps they could become a testament to our resilience. As we walked back toward the crowd, hand in hand, I knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey toward healing. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. We would face the aftermath together, and in doing so, we might just find a way to rebuild what was lost. With that thought, I took a deep breath, ready to embrace whatever came next.